Today we're going to learn about monitoring grazing utilization. We put together a program today that'll look at where to measure utilization, which will be in our key grazing areas, what to measure when you get there, which will be our key species. That's what we'll be monitoring. And how to go about it. How to lay out your transects, how many plants to measure, and so forth. The Okanagan Conservation District has helped us out and put together a monitoring grazing utilization workbook in a small pocket-sized booklet. What it has in it is the first 2 pages or so are lay out the sampling process, and goes through 25 worksheets, defines what key areas, key species, other pertinent definitions, and addresses of the local folks that are working in the natural resources field in this area. Now we're looking at where to locate our key grazing area. Now these key grazing areas are representative of the larger area. So we can go to 1 or 2 points in a pasture, and these will tell us what's going on with the plant community. The distance from water in the mountainous terrain that we're looking at today will be about a half mile. Down in the flatter country, typically we'll look 3/4 to 1 mile away to locate these key grazing areas. In mountainous terrain, the elevation up or down from water is also important. In the summertime, livestock will commonly move up or down 400 to 500 foot elevation. In the spring, they'll go much further. I've measured as high as 900 feet elevation rise from water. In these key grazing areas, we need a significant portion of the forage that we'll be looking at. The type and the amount of forage, and what range site is typical for that particular pasture. Next, we'll be looking at the type of forage species that are in this particular. We're on our key area now, and the landowner has decided he wants to manage for his most productive grass out here. Out on this site is blue bunch wheatgrass here on my right. There are other grasses out on this site, such as the needlegrass that we see here in the foreground, and there is a little bit of Idaho fescue and Sherman Big Blue from a fire years ago that was seeded after from an aerial seeding. But by far, this blue bunch wheatgrass is the most productive for this site, so that's what we're going to manage for. Now it's important when you're selecting your key forage species, your key species out here, you understand that particularly in the mountainous areas, the palatability changes on these grasses. Early in the year, your Idaho fescue and your blue bunch wheatgrass will be selected by the stock. They have about the same palatability. Later on, as the Idaho fescue cures out, they'll switch to blue bunch wheatgrass. And later yet, when these hot, dry south slopes are too hot for the stalk to be out, the bunch grass is set seed, and the forage quality is gone out of or is lowered in the blue bunch wheatgrass here, then they'll be up on the pine grass. And as fall comes, then they start working those south slopes again. So it's important to realize that the palatability will change as the season goes on. Done is picked a representative blue bunch wheatgrass plant, clipped it off at the base, and walking the area, this is what we'd call a representative of a medium-sized blue bunch wheatgrass plant on this site. We took the plant, sorted out all the dead material, threw that away, and simply tied it right in the middle. And what we'll do is we'll weigh this on our finger to find out where the 50% by weight point is on this one. Measuring it here, after we balanced it, we find that it's 9 inches to the halfway mark. Now here's a similar plant that we actually cut. Here's the 9-inch base, and then the top half. We balance this top half on our fingers. It balances out at 15 inches from the bottom. That's our 25% use mark. On the bottom, we did it again, balanced it on our finger, and found that the 75% use line is down at 5 inches. Now, how this plant reacted to the amount of moisture that was in this year, what the past grazing history was, if this place was undergrazed or overgrazed, have a tremendous effect on what production you get this year. So each year you need to go out and find representative plants from your different size classes. Here's a large plant for this site. The total height is 38 inches. So you see we can account for large plants versus small plants versus the medium-sized plants. What we've done is graph the large blue bunch wheatgrass, which is in the green, graphed our 4 points, our 50%, our 75%, and our 25% points. And we did the same with our medium-sized bunchgrass plant. We simply plotted those 4 points that we found by clipping off the plant, throwing out the old last year's growth, and weighing them on our finger. We graphed those 4 points, the 50% points, and so on. And why we're using this is to determine our different graze classes. We'll have a 80 to 100% graze class, which in our large size blue bunch wheatgrass, our break point is about 5.5 inches. Okay, our 60% is at 11 inches. 40%, 17.5, and 20% out here at 25 inches. Simply follow your 40% line over and go straight down, and that's how we determine these break points. We did the same with our small or our medium-sized bunchgrass plant. Here 80% use would give us a 3.5 inch stubble height. 60% use, 7 inches. 40%, 11.5 inches. And 20%, 17 inches. So the object of graphing out these points is to determine where these break points are on our different classes. And we'll walk across an area and look down and try to put the grazing pressure, the grazing on each plant in these different graze classes. In the 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60, 80, or 80 to 100. Okay, we're starting the pace transect. We'll measure 30 plants. I generally go on a diagonal across the slope, and we'll be able to account for medium-sized plants to small plants to large plants by fitting them into our graze class. This particular plant that I'm looking at right here is what I would term a medium-sized bunchgrass, real close to size of the plant that we clipped had it not been grazed. So I would say in an ungrazed situation this year, if this one wouldn't have been grazed, it'd be the same height and have the same height to weight relationship that our example of a medium-sized bunchgrass plant had that we graphed just a few moments earlier. Now I'll measure the stubble height. You'll notice that this thing got clipped down, probably to an average stubble height, the lower stuff, to about an 8-inch stubble height. Now there's a portion of this plant that wasn't grazed as heavy as that. It probably has about a 12-inch stubble height. So I would probably fit this one to about a 10-inch overall height, which fits in our 40 to 60% grazed class. Our 40% line on our medium-sized plant is 11.5 inches. The upper level is about 7 inches. So this easily fits in that 40 to 60% grazed class. And after you've done this a few times, you'll be able to look down and simply judge. I know this particular plant is in a 40 to 60% class. Write it down on the worksheet and continue on. Okay, we're 3 steps away from our last point. And I use the 3rd time my left foot hits. And we'll put the point right there. Now we draw an imaginary line in front of my foot at 90-degree angle from my foot, and select the closest key species, which is our blue bunch wheatgrass. Now there are other plants in front of my foot here, but this plant right here, is the closest one on a diagonal line. So this is the plant I want to measure for my next point on our grazed class transect. And we'll measure this guy, and basically it's been grazed down to about a 5-inch stubble height. Now looking at the grazed classes, that 3.5-inch to 7-inch is our 60 to 80% class. So I'll mark him down. One plant is down in our 60, 80. And continue on with my transect until I've measured 30 plants. Okay, we've completed 30 points on our transect, on a diagonal transect across our key area, measuring our key species. This system only works for 1 key species per worksheet. We're working on blue bunch wheatgrass. We came across 14 different bunchgrass plants that were in our 0% graze, in an ungrazed situation. We use this particular method for a dot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 different points in that one. So 0, we take the midpoint of this class times the number in each class. So here's our midpoint times, here's how many we had in there, times 14 equals 0. Okay, in our 1 to 20 class, we only had one plant. So one plant times the midpoint of this class, 10. Our midpoint in this 20 to 40 class is 30. 30 times 8, 240. Continue on. Okay, we add up the total. 570 divided by 30 is 19% utilization. Besides the pasture name, location of your key grazing area, the date, you need to rate the type of growing season as far as, and we've broken it into 3 different categories: below average, average, and above average. And also record the number and class of livestock, the dates they were grazed, so you can calculate the AUMs that were harvested out of that particular pasture. You know how many animal unit months, AUMs, that were taken off that pasture in an average growing year, average growing season, and you know that your utilization was 50% or below, you know you've properly grazed that piece of ground. Now, we went over in our graze class method of measuring utilization where to measure the grass, to locate your key grazing area. Then we selected our key species as the plant that we're going to go out and measure. We cut a diagonal across the slope in our key area and measure 30 plants. Group each one of these plants into a graze class and then simply take an average, a weighted average of those 30 plants to come up with your percent utilization. Now in the growing season, we recommend 50% utilization. During the dormant season, after these bunchgrass plants have set seed, 60% utilization. If you're curious where you can find more of these graze class worksheets, pocket-sized worksheets, they're available from the Okanogan County Conservation District.